Subscribe to the channel and hear even more exciting stories. My best friend asked me to pretend to be his date, and now I can't get him out of my head. Throw Ara, because I genuinely might combust if I keep this bottled up. So, here it goes. My name's Riley, 29, any pronouns, let's keep this universal, and my best friend is Leo. You know the type. He's the one everyone wants at their party, always quick with a dumb joke or a cup of coffee when you need it. We've known each other since our freshman year of college, back when we both wore too much plaid and thought energy drinks were an acceptable dinner. He's seen me ugly cry over breakups. I've seen him ruin 3 microwaves in as many months. The kind of close where our families mix us up, where silence never feels awkward. But if I'm honest, and isn't that what this subreddit is for, there have been moments. Stupid little ones, like the time his hand stayed on my shoulder a second too long after his grandfather's funeral. Or how I used to replay his texts in my head and wonder if "you're the best" meant anything more than, well, friendship. I always brushed those thoughts aside. Leo was safe. A known quantity. The one thing in my life that wasn't complicated. Still, I'd be lying if I said there weren't red flags fluttering in the background of my feelings. Times when I'd catch myself staring too long at his smile, or when his girlfriend of the moment made a snide joke and I felt a weird stab of something. Definitely not jealousy, right? I'm not a total idiot. I know what crushes look like, even when you're determined not to have one. So, that's the dynamic. Best friends, a little messy, definitely codependent, but platonic. At least, that's what I told myself. Until last Friday, when Leo called with his voice all sheepish and asked, "Hey, I know this is weird, but could you pretend to be my date for my cousin's wedding? Please. I owe you big time." And for the first time in years, I felt like the ground underneath our friendship might not be as steady as I thought. So about that phone call. It was a rainy Friday, the kind where your plans fall apart and the universe dares you to stay in bed. Leo called, and I could tell right away something was off. He never hesitates, but this time his voice had this awkward pause, like he was prepping for a dentist appointment. I tried to play it cool. "Hey, you sound like you swallowed a stapler. What's up?" He laughed, then launched into his pitch. "Okay, so, my cousin's wedding is next Saturday. You know, the one with all the extended family who think I'm still 12? Well, ever since my disastrous breakup with Tara, my mom's been on my case about bringing a nice date and finally settling down. I can't do it, Ree. Not solo. Will you, please, pretend to be my girlfriend for one day? Just for the sake of family peace." I wish I could say I hesitated, that I played it cool, but honestly, my heart did a weird little backflip. Part of me was flattered. Part of me was instantly stressed. Mostly, I wanted to ask, why me? Was it because I was safe? Because he knew I wouldn't catch feelings? Or because he secretly hoped I already had? But of course I said yes. I always say yes to Leo. He started laying out ground rules, which just made me laugh. We'll hold hands, maybe a kiss on the cheek, some coupley banter to sell it. Nothing over the top. He was already planning our outfits. "You'll wear that blue dress, right? The one that makes your eyes insane." And I realized I was already picturing the two of us, smiling, together, looking like the real deal. That's when I felt a prickle of fear. What if this isn't just a game for me? I hung up and sat on my bed, staring at my phone. A dozen memories rushed in. Late nights talking about life. The way he always noticed when I was sad. The way I always noticed him. Maybe I'd been pretending a lot longer than just one wedding day. By the time I went to sleep, the butterflies had started. It should have been a favor. So why did it feel like everything was about to change? The week leading up to the wedding was an emotional roller coaster disguised as business as usual. Leo and I texted constantly about logistics, outfits, and exactly how many fake couple photos we needed for Instagram to sell the ruse. On the surface, it was just playful banter. You do realize my aunt will grill you about baby names, right? But every message made my stomach flip. I tried to laugh it off, but it felt like we were both tiptoeing around something we didn't want to name. The big day arrived too fast. Leo picked me up in his battered car, his tie already crooked. "You look, wow," he said, and it didn't sound like a joke. I played it off, but inside I was a mess, thrilled and terrified in equal measure. He squeezed my hand for luck. My heart nearly burst. At the wedding, our act began in earnest. Holding hands under the table. Whispering jokes in each other's ears. sharing a dance, his hand warm on my back. To everyone else, we were just a couple in love, but for me, the line between pretend and real started to blur. He'd brush a strand of hair from my face, and my mind would spin. Was that for show, or was he feeling it too? I found myself laughing more, leaning closer, forgetting to act because, well, it didn't feel like acting. It wasn't just me, either. Leo seemed different, softer, more attentive. He kept glancing at me like he was memorizing my face. His mom pulled me aside, whispering how good you are for him, and I almost burst into tears. At dinner, when he squeezed my knee under the table, I felt an electric jolt that made me question every boundary I'd drawn. Somewhere between the cake and the slow songs, he pulled me onto the dance floor. "Thanks for doing this," he murmured. His breath tickled my ear. "I mean it, Riley. I couldn't have survived this day without you." I wanted to answer, to say something honest, but my throat closed up. The night air was thick with unspoken words, old jokes that suddenly felt like confessions. As we drove home, still buzzing from champagne and adrenaline, he reached for my hand and didn't let go. We didn't talk much, but something in the silence said everything. I lay awake that night replaying every look, every laugh, every accidental touch. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't pretending at all. The days after the wedding were a weird, painful blend of hope and confusion. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart did that ridiculous thing, jumping at Leo's name, then crashing when it was just a group chat or work email. We didn't talk about the wedding. We just talked. Memes, music recs, a running debate about which ice cream flavor is the GOAT. But everything felt loaded, like we were both balancing on the edge of something we couldn't name. It was a Tuesday night when it hit me. I was scrolling Instagram, mindlessly tapping stories, when I saw a candid shot someone had taken at the wedding. Leo and me, caught mid-laugh on the dance floor, arms around each other. We looked so stupidly happy, so together, that it made my chest ache. Suddenly, the memories weren't cute anymore. They were sharp. I realized I didn't want to go back to just friends. The pretending had undone me. That night, I replayed everything in my mind. The way his eyes had lingered, the way his touch felt both familiar and electric. I remembered the look on his face after our fake couple routine, the softness in his voice. And underneath all of it, the crushing awareness that I couldn't tell him how I felt without risking everything. I spent the next few days walking around in a haze, wanting to text him, not knowing what to say. Jealousy, of all things, crept in when he mentioned a coworker. "She's actually really funny. You'd like her." Suddenly, every woman in his orbit felt like a threat. Was I losing my mind, or had I always been this possessive and just never admitted it? I started overanalyzing every message, every emoji, every "see you soon." Was he just being friendly, or was he as scared as I was? A tiny, traitorous part of me hoped he'd break first, say something that made it safe to admit the truth. Instead, we danced around the subject, joking, bantering, almost confessing, then pulling back. The realization crept in slowly, and then all at once. I was completely, helplessly in love with my best friend. And now that I knew, I couldn't unknow it. Once you admit to yourself that you're in love with your best friend, your brain becomes an endless battleground. Every time Leo texted, "Hey, you busy?" my heart would leap, and then the dread would crash in right after. What if I was reading everything wrong? What if he just liked having me as his safe, drama-free plus one? The fear of ruining our friendship felt bigger than anything I'd ever risked. I kept replaying every moment from the wedding, torturing myself with what-ifs. What if I'd just said something on the drive home? What if I'd kissed him, just once, to see if he'd kiss me back? My head invented a dozen parallel universes, each with a braver version of me who didn't freeze at the last second. It wasn't just the fear of rejection, it was the fear of change. Leo was my anchor, my history, my go-to person for everything from late-night breakdowns to dumb inside jokes. If I told him how I really felt, would I lose all that? I found myself resenting people in his life I'd never cared about before, colleagues, exes, even his family. Every time he mentioned hanging out with someone else, I felt a flash of jealousy that I barely recognized as myself. But I also couldn't stop fantasizing about a life where we didn't have to pretend. Silly domestic daydreams, waking up next to him, bickering over coffee, holding hands in public just because we wanted to. It was both intoxicating and torture. There were nights I'd draft texts, half confession, half joke, only to delete them before they could see the light of day. The more I tried to just be friends, the more impossible it felt. Leo would touch my arm when he laughed, or send a playlist that reminded me of you, and I'd spiral for hours. Was I inventing the tension, or was he feeling it too? There were moments I caught him staring, the air crackling with possibility, and I wanted to blurt everything out. But then reality would crash in, his next joke, the next distraction, the safe zone we'd built for years. My feelings felt like a secret I couldn't bury, but also couldn't say out loud. And so, I stayed stuck in limbo, half terrified, half hopeful, desperately wishing for a sign that it wasn't all just in my head. There's only so long you can bottle up a secret before it starts leaking out at the seams. For me, it happened on an ordinary Thursday, the kind of night where neither of us wanted to go home. So we grabbed cheap Thai food and ended up sprawled across Leo's living room, half watching a dumb movie and trading stories about terrible first dates. I was doing my usual thing, pretending to be casual, making jokes, hiding my panic behind sarcasm. But then he looked at me, really looked. And everything just shifted. He said, "Do you ever think about how weird it is that we never dated?" He said it lightly, like it was just another hypothetical, but something in his voice made me sit up. My heart was suddenly in my throat. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. What? Like a fake date or a real one? I joked, but my hands were shaking. Leo didn't smile. He just held my gaze, all traces of joking gone. I mean, sometimes I wonder if we're just pretending not to want the same thing. There it was, the line I'd been terrified to cross, dangling between us. I couldn't look away. And what if we are? I asked, barely more than a whisper. He reached for my hand, slow and unsure. Then maybe we should stop pretending. It was quiet. So quiet I could hear my pulse in my ears. Every reason not to say it, every fear of wrecking what we had, collapsed under the weight of finally being honest. I don't want to be just friends, I admitted, my voice shaky but steady. Leo squeezed my hand. Me neither, he said, so simply it almost hurt. We didn't kiss, not right away. We just sat there, hands tangled, hearts pounding, both a little stunned that the world hadn't ended. I half expected someone to burst in and tell us we'd made a huge mistake. Instead, the silence felt soft and safe. Later, we talked, really talked, for the first time in ages. About what we wanted, about what scared us, about how neither of us wanted to lose the friendship but couldn't keep lying, either. That night, as I walked home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The truth was out. Maybe everything would change. Maybe it already had. But for the first time, I was excited to see what happened next. You'd think that finally confessing would bring instant clarity, but real life is messier than that. The next day, I woke up tangled in nerves, my mind replaying every word from the night before. Relief warred with panic. Had I misread everything? Would Leo regret it? Would we just snap back into our old friendship, pretending last night never happened? But then my phone buzzed, a simple "Hey, wanna grab breakfast?" And all that anxiety melted just a bit. We met up at our usual greasy spoon, the kind where the waitresses remember your order. I was shaking, but Leo just grinned, a little sheepish, a lot hopeful. "So, is this our first official not date?" he teased, voice soft enough that only I could hear. Suddenly, all the fear faded. We sat together in that booth, closer than ever, finally honest. There was awkwardness, of course there was. We kept bumping knees under the table and laughing too loud. But there was also a giddy lightness, like we'd stepped out of a stuffy closet into fresh air. It wasn't all sunshine, though. Later that day, the what-ifs crept in. What if things got weird? What if we tried and failed? What if the magic of our friendship got lost in the messiness of romance? I caught myself second-guessing every move, terrified of pushing too fast or holding back too much. But Leo was steady. "One step at a time, yeah," he said, squeezing my hand as we wandered the park, our fingers laced like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time, I let myself just be. No games, no pretending. Just two idiots trying to figure it out. There was still fear, of course there was. But underneath it, there was hope. Real, pulsing, terrifying hope. The kind you only get when you risk everything for something that might be better than you ever dared to imagine. That night, As I fell asleep, I realized that I wasn't just scared of losing Leo. I was scared of finally being happy, and maybe, just maybe, believing I deserved it. If you think there's a magic moment where friendship seamlessly morphs into romance and all the awkwardness vanishes, spoiler alert, it's nothing like that. Leo and I tiptoed through the first weeks as maybe more than friends, like two people learning a dance they'd only watched in movies. Every new touch, every too long hug, every nervous joke felt loaded, delicate, important. Sometimes, in the middle of what should have been a normal day, I'd look at him and wonder if I was allowed to be this happy, or if the universe was waiting to pull the rug out from under us. The first time we kissed, it was as hilariously imperfect as you'd expect. We'd stayed up late at his place, talking about everything and nothing, and suddenly I just blurted out, "If I don't kiss you right now, I might combust." Leo laughed, nervous, surprised, blushing, and then, finally, he leaned in. It wasn't fireworks. It was soft, tentative, clumsy, exactly us. And somehow, it made everything real. We started to build a new routine, fumbling through boundaries and expectations. Could we still roast each other about old crushes? Who texts first now? Was it okay to say, "I love you"? Even though we'd probably said it 1,000 times before, just never like this? The transition was messy and beautiful. Sometimes we overcorrected, trying too hard to be a real couple, or pretending nothing had changed. There were small fights, awkward silences, and once, a spectacularly bad double date with mutual friends who clearly saw right through us. But through it all, the foundation, years of inside jokes, shared history, unspoken trust, held strong. If anything, it deepened. We found joy in the ordinary. Movie marathons, pancakes at midnight, lazy Sunday mornings where nothing needed to be said. I realized that being with Leo wasn't just about being in love. It was about being known, entirely, and without reservation. Sure, the fear didn't vanish. Every now and then, I'd worry, what if it doesn't last? What if the romance fizzles, and we lose everything? But those thoughts didn't dominate anymore. The present felt too good, too real, to be drowned out by hypothetical doom. I knew we weren't just playing couple anymore. We were building something new, fragile, imperfect, but ours. And for the first time, that was enough. Now that I've crossed over to the other side of the friendship line, I find myself replaying everything that led up to it. Not just the wedding, not just the moment on Leo's couch, but the years of us, the slow-burn friendship that built a whole life in inside jokes and glances that meant more than words. It's wild, honestly, how many times I nearly missed the truth because I was too scared to see it. Would I do it all again, knowing what I know now? Absolutely. But I won't lie. There were nights I almost chickened out, nights when the silence on the other end of a text message felt like 1,000 pounds of regret. I had to grieve the possibility that things might never go back to normal, whatever that was. But I also had to let myself hope. Hope that maybe the best love stories aren't about fireworks, but about slow trust, about showing up when it would be easier to run. What did I learn? Mostly, that you can't outsmart your own feelings forever. You can pretend, you can deflect, you can make 100 jokes, but at the end of the day, your heart has a way of leaking out the truth. The scariest part isn't telling your friend how you feel. It's giving up the fantasy that if you keep quiet, nothing will ever change. Things will change. That's life. The only thing you get to choose is whether you'll risk honesty for the chance at something real. Looking back, I see that all the fear and uncertainty was part of the deal. You don't get to skip the messy parts, the confusion, the jealousy, the weird awkwardness of new boundaries. But you also don't get to skip the relief, the laughter, the way "I love you" sounds when it finally means everything it always could. So is it worth it? Yes. Because, win or lose, I finally got to live my own story, one where I stopped hiding, stopped settling for almost, and finally let myself want more. And for anyone else in my shoes, here's my hot take. Go for it. Life's too short to live in what-ifs. You might just surprise yourself with how brave you are. If you're sitting there, stuck between risking your friendship and hiding your feelings, here's what I'll tell you. Don't let fear write your story. The hardest part was believing I was allowed to want more, that I deserved it. It's messy and scary, and sometimes you'll wish you could rewind. But being honest is the only way you'll ever know what could be. Let yourself be brave. Laugh at how awkward it gets. Cherish the friendship, but don't let it cage your heart. If it's real, it can survive the truth, and maybe, just maybe, it'll turn into something you never expected, but always secretly hoped for.